After a number of weeks of very positive performances, it's returned to Oxford United's normal for the 25-26 campaign. A 2-0 loss at St Mary's, a diabolical first half in particular, which of course we'll get into on this week's edition of Walking the London Road. Will Unconnor with us, of course, as per usual. Gentlemen, I know neither of you made the trip down St Mary's like I did. Connor, what'd you do with your weekend other than watching that shit again?
Not check the score. That's literally what I did all through the entirety of Saturday. Just stayed away from football.
Well, yourself, was it a work day or like kind of staying away from the scores while you hung around with the other people in your life?
It was a work day. I was working an event, and I usually work in a pretty quiet cafe, and there were 15,000 people for this event. So you can imagine how fun that. And it was so busy I couldn't check my phone throughout the whole shift. So I got off at 4, and I was checking the score. Just fingers crossed. Oh, maybe it's something to lift my mood up. And I saw we were 2-0 down after 10 minutes. I thought, oh, that's just great, isn't it? So yeah, not the best weekend, but I don't know. Would I have had a better time if I went to Southampton? I'm not quite sure.
Pre-match, probably. Post-match, no.
No.
I will say Southampton's, we've had the opportunity to go to a lot of places around the country since being back in the second division, and Southampton's a really nice place. I haven't been there in a long, long time. Very nice, some nice pubs, as you expect. And obviously the sun was shining on the south coast, so made for, first away day of t-shirt weather. But as soon as that the first half began, it was shocking. But we'll get into that momentarily, and also a funny anecdote from that game, which involves yourself, Connor. But before we get too far into it, please remember, folks, to like, comment, and subscribe. Really helps us out in the algorithm. We've been, your support in recent weeks has been fantastic, and we're the last couple of weeks of the campaign. Let's try and push on. Like we will in the stand, to try and keep Oxford United in the second division of British football. And as ever, follow us all on Twitter and other socials at the handles you can see on screen. So let's start with the lineup that Matt Bloomfield deployed, because there was a lot of questions about it as soon as the lineup was posted. Return to a back 3/back 5. Miles Peart-Harris also returned after missing last weekend's game against Charlton with a knock. Connor, I won't lie, as soon as this came out, I thought, oh no, because the last few times we've run with a back 3/back 5, it's not gone well whatsoever.
I guess so. I just wonder if Bloomfield was thinking there's an opportunity to do similar with what could be done at Leicester, and that we went to a back 5 and generally it worked. But I think that was more about that, just how poor Leicester were going forward, rather than rather than us being good defensively. But the last time I think I remember us going to a back 5 was when we got absolutely done over a treat by Norwich. Yeah. As I said, I kept away from most of it this weekend. I saw the lineup of FOTMob. It was on it was in a 4-2-3-1, and I just assumed that it was the same lineup as last week. But seeing that it went to a back 5, and especially with, as you say, with how we've been playing in that system, and with the threat that Southampton have going forward, I think Matt Bloomfield really set himself up for a fair amount of criticism if this went wrong.
Well, you said yourself, you weren't able to check your phone all weekend, but kind of when you were looking back, did you have a look at that lineup and go, that makes sense that, obviously we can see 2 goals in the first 15 minutes?
Yeah. As soon as I saw back 5, it makes sense to play a bit more defensive when you're playing a team that's sort of chasing the playoffs, but it hasn't really worked for us that many times this season. So as soon as I saw that, I just thought, so it deflated me a little bit. I would have liked us to have gone for it a little bit more and to show that we were going to go for it in this lineup, but it just didn't seem that way. So it was a bit deflating for me. I think like yourself, when I saw that, I was just like, oh no, that explains the scoreline that I've just checked. Okay, there we go.
I know the system's the big issue, but I think that straight from the off, the other big issue would be that we've dropped our most creative player in Donnelly. I didn't go to the game, Sam. Like as you said, neither I or Will went, but I'm sure would you be able to attest to the fact that even being 2-0 down, and if we were in, if we had moments of transitions and being able to break away, if we had someone like Donnelly, you'd probably feel a lot more comfortable and confident that maybe something could be created on those quick transitions.
100%. We'll talk about
Yeah.
it a little bit later, but there was definitely the sense that Lancashire was in the graveyard shift with nothing linking up him and the rest of the side. But we'll touch on that a little bit later because I think there's a deeper conversation we all want to go into about that whole system. But I think you're right. After his couple performances back in Oxford United shirt after injury, I think Donnelly has become one of those undroppables just because of his work rate, what he brings, all that kind of stuff. I also want to raise Jinwoo. Obviously there's a certain amount of the hype around him that is buying into the joke of this very, very popular social media player and all that kind of stuff. But genuinely, another performance on Saturday where he came on, looked bright, looked to try and create something, and I again question, as good as Mills is, Pert Harris obviously just come back from a knock, but I do think what's he got to do to get a start in this team? Maybe change things up and drop Miles Pert Harris for a game and have two flying wingers in Mills and Jinwoo. Not sure what you two think about it, but we're certainly in a situation where I'm sat thinking, what's this lad got to do? Because he looks pretty bright when he comes on the pitch.
We're going to see Jinwoo start over Easter. That is my prediction because, 2 games in the space of 3 days. I don't think there's just any way that Mills and Pert Harris will be able to go starting 2 games in 3 days. I would feel a lot more comfortable, if I'm honest, boys, if there was Mills and Jinwoo against Portsmouth. I'd understand it if there was the same players out wide in Pert Harris and Mills against Hull, because we'll get, just as a little preview, with Portsmouth, if we just go not so much hell for leather, but go fast, direct, which is what both Mills and Jinwoo are, and offer a bit of creativity with Donnelly in the middle. That's where I think that we could get some points over the weekend, but that's a separate discussion down the line. But yeah, to your original point, Sam, I be very, very disappointed if we don't see him start at least 1 game over that Easter period.
Yeah, has to with the congestion. Will, any thoughts on what Jinwoo's got to do to get a start?
No, I completely echo your guys' points, and I think the Easter period is, if there's any time he's going to be able to get a place in the starting 11, it has to be over Easter. Because like you said, it's so congested. There's no way we can be putting out the same lineup every single game. I just hope he's given an opportunity because he's shown bright sparks of what he's able to offer. So if he's given a full 90 minutes or at least a first half at the very least, then hopefully he can show us a bit more and help us in our quest to stay up.
So just obviously do as we always do, break down the game. Portsmouth, Southampton. I say that's a little insight into the preview we're going to have in a little bit. Southampton dominated this game. Unsurprisingly, almost 70% possession, over 20 shots. 1.85 XG, and unsurprising really, given the quality of players they have at their disposal and where they're on the league and all that kind of thing. But that being said, we've been able to really take it to those in the upper echelons of this division so far this campaign. This first half really reminded me of our trip to Swansea. Back in, when was that? November, I think. Yeah. It reminded me of that game and that particularly, obviously, that first half and just how diabolical it was. Connor, obviously, we saw each other at that game. Well, I can't remember if you were there as well, but I just got such strong kind of flashbacks as we were just seeing wave after wave of attack and the overall poor quality that we displayed in that first half against Southampton.
Was it more to do with the system, or was it more to do with the player quality, or was it more to do with that just Southampton are an infinitely better side than us?
I think it's probably a mixture of the first and the third.
Okay, I was going to say because Southampton and Oxford United are just completely stratospheres apart, even in the Championship. So I'm not sure how much needs to be considered and how much leeway needs to be given, and that's taken into context about when we're going to obliterate the display that was on Saturday afternoon.
So the first goal for Southampton comes from a really, really simple defence splitting ball, I believe from Taylor Harwood-Bellis. And it just completely cuts our defence apart, goes right in between Jack Curry and Mikhail Helik, out to Tom Fellows, who I was speaking to, a Southampton fan on Thursday. He was saying that Fellows hasn't really been able to show off the sparks he showed at West Brom, and since he's moved to St Mary's, this was his game to do that. Just bloody luck. Puts the ball across, and Larin pokes home from close range. In the moment, I was thinking that's all on Jack Curry, but watching it back, Mikhail Helik, I think the gap between Helik and Jack Curry is too big for, to allow that to take place. But also the fact the pass completely bypasses our midfield. Again, we'll talk about the system, I'm sure, at length throughout the course of this, because as we've mentioned, the 5 at the back seems to be, or 3 at the back, in transitions, seems to really be an issue when we're soaking up so much pressure. Will, I'm presuming that obviously saw the scores, you kind of watched the highlights back. Are there any other things you noticed about that first goal?
It's just like we were completely caught off guard, and I think it also speaks to the quality of the Southampton players over the quality of our players. So they're able to pull off such a simple move. We do that because other teams would just be far more organised than us. And I think that first goal, and when I've watched it back, that first half in particular, like you said, talk about that Swansea game, but also just talk about almost like reminding me of like the early days of the season, where not in the sense that we didn't know what we were doing, but we were just completely outclassed by the opposition. And like you said, it was just wave after wave of attack and wave after wave of, just like we didn't have much going forward, and it sort of like spoke back to those sort of feelings of the good old days of September through to January, where it seemed like every team we were facing, we like I said, we just didn't know what we were doing. We were just completely under the cosh for all of it. And I think that first goal sort of like wraps it up. They completely caught us off guard. We didn't. Our defence clearly didn't know how to deal with it, and they just had the quality to put it away, which is something that we don't have.
I feel like those, the first goal and the second goal are polar opposites, but both brilliant goals in their own right, Connor. Like we said, the first, defence splitting ball, the way that Tom Fellows makes the run, Laren's positioning, all that kind of thing. Am I?
Are you cutting out? Yeah.
That second goal was great, though, wasn't it?
It was an absolute peach. I'm not going to criticise anybody because it was an absolute thunder bastard.
I'm not. When you can't even be annoyed. You're just like, fair play, mate.
I think both those goals are very, very good examples of great goals in the sense that the first is a really good team move, and we'll talk about the second in a minute. Connor, am I being overly critical of our players and that ball was just too good for us to deal with, or as we'll mention a couple of times already, and we'll go on to talk about a lot more, the system got exposed by that very simple through ball?
I think a bit of both. 'Cause the back line was also very, very flat when when that first ball was played through, and also correct in just the golf in player quality. I mean, Southampton can make a simple ball look like frying Pirlo spraying it across the pitch. Unfortunately, when you compare it to our backline is maybe like a top end, maybe League One, maybe almost 24th, 23rd. Well, it is 23rd at the moment, Championship, and you're talking about Premier League players, playing balls of that quality. So, as I've already alluded to, I do think there needs to be a bit of context in the gulf of chasm between the two sides, that even if we'd have come away with a 0-0 draw from this game, we would have been absolutely bloody ecstatic, because I don't. If we're honest with ourselves, I don't think that a lot of fans were going thinking that we could come away, with a win, a draw, maybe. But
I was.
Were you? I respect your optimism.
So the second is obviously an absolute worldie from Shea Charles. A corner kick routine straight off the training ground. At the same time, again, not taking anything away from the hit, it's ridiculous. And being stood where I was in the away end, the curl that he put on that ball is outrageous. Obviously, they showed it on the big screen a couple of times. Every time I watch, I just saw a new thing about it. Kind of the way he comes onto the ball, doesn't take a touch, just puts his foot through it, all that kind of stuff. Well, obviously, like we've already said, it's a fantastic goal. I also thought, why is obviously part of it does come down to the fact that he is so high up in our half that kind of no one's thinking about him, but maybe a lack of urgency to get out and close him down as soon as it's clear that the ball's heading towards Shea Charles.
You could say that, but you could also say that, like you said, he's so far out that the probability of him shooting from that distance and the probability of him scoring from that distance is incredibly low. And so they were probably, he's going to whip the ball back in. So let's try and get ourselves ready positionally, defensively for that. Yes, he could have been closed down sooner, but he was so far out that if anyone had run at him, it wouldn't have made a difference. It still would have flown to the top corner. I do see what you're saying in the sense of could have one of our players done a bit more, but at the end of the day, I just think it's a fantastic goal, and he's so far out that you can't really lay much criticism on our players for this one. I would say.
Connor, what do you reckon?
I do kind of see what you're saying in that aftermath, but I think we just have to sit back and say that it was just an absolutely outrageous goal. Even if there was someone, I think that it might have been either Konak or Pert Harris, who was originally originally brought into press, the other Southampton man, before it was played out to Shea Charles. But unfortunately, Sam, I think you're just going to have to say it was just. I'm sure if he tried that another 99,000 times, he's not going to hit it as sweetly as he did. It was just that he just caught it in the absolute sweet spot.
It did from the range, kind of he hit it. I was getting flashbacks to obviously a goal that we scored last season, Brannigan's Thunder Bastard against Cardiff. So yeah, I see what you're saying. Like I say, no taking away from Shea Charles. It was a phenomenal strike. It will be in contention for, it's quite infuriating that two of the potential goal of the season candidates were against us. But, not taking anything away from Shea Charles, just, questioning, could we have done more to prevent it from happening? So, obviously, those two goals go in inside the first quarter of an hour, and that's the moment where I was stood there thinking about a certain message that you put in the group chat, Connor, about shithousing a 2-1 smash and grab win at St Mary's, and just wishing that we'd been able to do it. The rest of that first half, Southampton continued to pile on the pressure, and we created the odd opportunity from set pieces. Our kind of one golden weapon had been severely depleted by the fact that Southampton had placed some charity advertising boards close to the edge of the pitch to stop Pat Harris and Kieran Brown from doing their long throws. Which what were our thoughts on Bloomfield's comments after the game, kind of talking about endangering player safety and all that kind of thing?
Nonsense, to be honest, because what he really wanted to say was that it stopped us doing a throw-in. I like Matt Bloomfield, but kind of grow up.
Yeah, that's what I thought. When I kind of saw it, on the train back, I was like, hang on, are you sure, Matt? Because what's player safety got to do with it?
Fans aren't stupid. They can see through him, and a lot of Southampton fans and a lot of Oxford fans who commented on those articles knew exactly what he was actually saying.
Yeah, it's just part of the game. Sunderland have done it with Arsenal, I think, this season when Arsenal went to the Stadium of Light. So it's a well known tactic, Any home team's going to do what they can to get an advantage over the visitors. The old is it Sir Alex Ferguson, I think, both doing and accusing other teams of overwatering the pitch and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. It's a well worn thing in football to try and get a slight advantage.
I mean, if you think for for 70 years, our pitch was on a slope like this, so I don't think we can out other teams taking advantage of their grounds. I mean, at the very least, if Southampton can do it, then why can't we do it when we face a team that has really good long throw-ins? Let's do that against Portsmouth and just frustrate them. But it's a bit of a ridiculous thing to complain about it in the context of player safety, because it isn't about player safety. If it was that big an issue, they wouldn't have been allowed to do it.
Yeah. And they were only small barriers, and probably made out of cardboard or something. So if a player had gone into them, they would have been fine. It's not, if it was the metal LED boards, maybe he's got a bit more of an argument, but it wasn't. They were very thin, plasticky ones that you probably, would have gone over or just flattened if a player had gone into them. So it's ridiculous. And, I like Matt Bloomfield a lot, but that's to say that's clutching at straws would be a massive understatement. So at half time, obviously, all of us in the away end are stood thinking this game's over and done with. We have chances in that second half to get back in the game. The main one through Will Lancashire, sent through by, I think it was Miles Pert Harris, played through one-on-one with the goalkeeper. Southampton started they were defensively a bit shaky for some reason, even though we hadn't posed much of a threat up to that point. There's poor distribution from their keeper at times, but Lancashire sent through and he puts it wide. Very out of character for Will Lancashire. It's something you'd expect Sparky to do from time to time if he had the opportunity, but at that point I knew it wasn't gonna be our day. Connor, those things just happen, don't they, for strikers, especially when when you could just feel that it's not going to go your way on that particular day.
Yeah, they just happen. It's not the first time that's happened to Will Lancashire, and I think of all of our strikers, he's the one that can this season. He's the one that can be forgiven for missing those opportunities. I'm not sure about you, Will.
Yeah, I think Will, I'm not sure on your thoughts about this. What do you reckon?
When I watched the highlights immediately after they came out, and I saw obviously I was keeping up to date with the game on Twitter, and I saw Will Lancashire missed a massive chance, and everyone's in their comments has been like, he's just missed it there. And I watched the highlights back, and I'm like, oh, how the heck has he missed that? Because when you go in and you're 2-0 down, the game's as good as gone. Then we're not coming back from that. All you want is for your players to show a bit of fight, to have a good go at it, and maybe just steal a goal if they can. If anything, to at least pay homage to the 3,000 Oxford fans who travelled all the way to Southampton.
Yeah.
And like you said, I mean, Southampton were a bit shaky. We had a bit more fight than we did in the first half, but it wasn't anything spectacular. Then again, Southampton are a really good team. Anyway, so we get this really good opportunity to get a goal back. And I'm not saying we get a goal back and we go on to win it, but we get a goal back and you never know.
Yeah.
Or
at the very changed the momentum of that game at that point.
Or our goal difference is one more above than it would have been,
Yeah.
And wide. And that is why after the, I think later on Saturday evening or Sunday morning, that's why I messaged the group chat and was like, we need to talk about Will Lancashire, because I'm not saying that he's as bad as Mark Harris. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that the last few weeks or last few months, the theme of Will Lancashire missing big chances is starting to become a little bit more frequent. Not nearly as bad as our striker from Wales, but just a little bit more frequent. And I'll point to another game, the Preston game, if you remember, in the first half. The big chances that he missed in that one. I'm thinking of the one where he was right in front of the goalkeeper, and it was a poor touch, and he probably wasn't expecting it. But when we're in the position that we're in, any chance we get, we have to put the ball in the back of the net. And I'm thinking back to that, and I'm thinking about Southampton, and it just means maybe I've got PTSD from watching Mark Harris for like a year or so. But whenever he gets a really good opportunity, especially when he's right in front of the goalkeeper and it's just him one-on-one, I'm not in the back of my mind. I'm like, he's going to miss it, isn't he? He's going to miss it. I can just see it. I don't know. Maybe it's PTSD, but I just feel like the frequency of him missing big chances is it's increasing to the point where I'm not as comfortable as otherwise would be. I can see, Connor, you're agreeing with every word I say. What do you make of this?
I mean, he did score against Preston, albeit it was a flick off the stud.
That was not insulting. Right, he got the blade of his shoelace onto it, and he immediately rushed off to the away end with his hand in the air because he knew, I have to make up for what I missed in the first half. That was not his.
A touch meant everything. That's it. All it was that little
touch. What touch? He might as well use the force. Like, he didn't bloody touch it. I'm amazed that goal even got rewarded to him.
He then also took his opportunity the next game against against West Brom, or the game before, against West Brom.
Yeah, but like, do you see what I mean? This is what I mean. It's not as bad as Mark Harris, but it's just the frequency of him missing big chances is getting a bit too frequent for my liking.
I do see what you mean. The past few weeks that he has had big opportunities. I'm not going to go down the route that he's still young and still raw, because he's started almost nearly every game this season, and he's been delivered those rare opportunities, shall we say, and that comes from the lack of creativity. Going back to our earlier conversation, I think that Will Lancashire, I think he feels more confident and he feels more assured when he has Donnelly on the pitch, in that being that he knows that he's going to get at least one massive opportunity because of the creativity that Donnelly can bring and the link up between the two and the relationship that both of them have. I think that through Will Lancashire missing that big chance, it's probably still running through his head right now, and it probably will do for the next few days whilst I assume that the team is off. And I'll be honest, I cannot wait for him to see him against Hull on Good Friday. And then I can't wait to see him for the rest of the season, because I'm sure that because of that, he knows what a massive opportunity that was, and he's going to be eating away inside of him. And now he's got a point to prove that he can take those big opportunities, and that he's not just someone that's either a tap-in merchant or is just one that scores luckily off his head, because he is a very, very good striker. And I cannot wait to see him, because I think that is going to be a man possessed.
I don't doubt he's a very good striker. I'm just saying, I'm just starting to get a little bit shaky when he gets in front of goal. And I just hope he doesn't go down the path of Mark Harris when he missed so many big opportunities, that to the point where he goes in front of goal and you think he's not going to put this away. I'm not saying he is at that point yet. I'm just saying he's starting to go towards that point, at least for me. And I just don't want him to get so far in that, like, whenever he sees the goal in front of him, he panics and he puts it wide. But I don't think he's a bad striker. I still think he's a very good striker. I hope he responds positively to this miss and to the other big chances that he's missed, basically.
And I will say, to kind of back up Connor's point, that strikers miss big opportunities like that. I always go back to, I don't know why it's kind of sticks in my head, but I think it's kind of the most glaring example. There was a game between Man City and Chelsea a couple of years ago, and Aguero missed a tap-in from about 2 yards out, and he puts it the wrong side of the post and then scores from 25 yards out. Strikers do that, they have those big opportunities, and sometimes they miss them, sometimes they'll convert them. It's just the nature of the role. At the same time, Lancashire is that particular game, in the graveyard shift, like Connor said, with the lack of a number 10 to link up our two number 6s, or a 6 in the 8 in Brannigan and Will Lancashire, he's running around, trying to do something, all on his lonesome. So, when the surprise ball does come through and he's like, I've got this massive opportunity, I'm not saying he, loses concentration, but I think it stands out a bit more because he has so little provided to him in games like we saw on Saturday.
Oh yeah, it definitely. Oh, no, go on. I'll just say, like, it definitely does stick out more because of because of where we are. we have so
Yeah.
few big. So Aguero misses a big chance, but he plays for Man City, so he'll get 20 big chances every game he plays. Will Lancashire will get one, two, or three big chances in a game if we're lucky. So I think for me, when he does miss a big chance, maybe that's why it balloons so much more. Does that sort of make sense? I do agree that the service that he got against Southampton was completely crap, and that him missing Donnelly had a massive effect on his game. It's just a shame. Again, like that one big chance that we got against Southampton, it went wide, so it feels all the more sort of like dramatic.
Yeah, 100%. There is questions over, the other players around him. I mean, there's a moment that, one of the rare chances we had in that second half where the ball is fed from, I think it's Sam Long, out to Stan Mills on the right-hand side. He gets into the area, and instead of trying to whip the ball across the face of goal where Lancashire is waiting, he's managed to beat his defender for pace. Stan Mills stops, backs into the defender to try and win a penalty, which, again, that's like you said, Connor, not going to fully put it down to young player decision making, that kind of thing. But in those kind of brief moments where we have so little in the attacking phase, they stand out like sore thumbs. Connor, the general, I do agree with Will in the sense of the general decision making in the attacking phase has been arguably one of the main reasons we're down in this situation, because if you look at over the course of the season, we've probably missed a massive number of big opportunities just because we've not got the quality on par with other sides in this division, and I think maybe that's kind of partly down to us being where we, I'm not going to deny the fact that we've had some diabolical performances, but we've had so many games this season where we've lost by the odd goal because we haven't converted our chances.
And it was the same story last season as well, Sam. In the final third, just haven't got the player quality in terms of decision making and football intelligence, I guess, compared to a lot of other teams in this division for making those key moments and split moment decisions in the final third. I'm sure that if you put like this, it sounds mental, but just go with it. Like if you put this into League One, you'd say, oh yeah, they're Championship players because their decision maker would be so much better than what it is in League One. But it just proves like the step up from League One to the Championship is big and it's growing, and just the size of the club we are. And whilst we do have very wealthy owners, we can't spend as much money as we want to be able to bring in those players that have a greater decision making and quick decision making in those key areas. So unfortunately, this is what, until we get, it all comes back to that stadium, Sam. Until we get that stadium, we can generate our own income. This is what it's gonna. This is the result of what of the whole stadium's scenario, that it eventually does filter out onto the pitch of being able to get the players that we need to be able to compete and be competitive.
And on the stadium matters, a very quick little side point that was driving past it today, and there's been some kind of works doing to kind of deforest the area, so it looks like we might be finally a matter of days away to proper spades in the ground. About bloody time too. So that's good news.
I'm just saying one more thing regarding, it sort of links to the stadium, but the club accounts came out recently. And am I right in saying we lost £17 million?
Yeah, I think it's like 17.5 million quid.
Yeah. And I think obviously that's partly down to the stadium, but I think it just proves that, like, it puts into perspective the resources that we are working with in this division compared to other clubs. How can you be on par with ex-Premier League teams when you got a three-sided stadium and you're losing that, and you're just losing that amount of money? It's crazy.
I mean, I'd slightly disagree on the point about the finances, in the sense that every club in the EFL is losing money. I think obviously football finance expert Kieran Maguire does a lot of work on this, and I think he says that most EFL clubs lose at minimum like 150 grand a week or something like that. You know,
Yeah.
I'd be very, very surprised if you go through the accounts that were released by football clubs, and if you find more than five that made a profit
Yeah.
in the last tax year, just because it's something that's repeated time and time again about people that want to buy football clubs. You don't get into football to make money. An industry that bleeds cash on a very, very frequent basis. Connor's the EFL expert around these parts. You've covered many, many football clubs who just continually lose massive amounts of money, and that even goes down to the National League. Some of the money they're losing is astronomical for the revenue that they generate over the course of a campaign.
Yeah, I'd just say to Will, it could be. It's a balance of what do you want. In the respect that I believe that our accounts was a 2 million loss, or a further £2 million loss compared to the last financial year. I would say that shows that that Eric here is willing to spend as much as he can within the rules and what we're allowed to spend. Or on the other hand, we could be like Portsmouth, for example, who I think they lost around 4 million in the last financial year. However, you look at their performances on the pitch, yes, there are other factors, but you see the discontent that the fans are having at the moment, the fact that their owners are not spending, and that's creating a bit of a toxic atmosphere. I think that in our case, I'm not so much critical of Eric, it's more some people on the board that it's well known my thoughts and feelings on there, but you can't say that they haven't been acting within the best interest, because they could have, Eric and other investors could have easily just said, nah, screw this, we're going to go hell for leather. And then that would have been, that would have been some real warning signs and some massive red flags. So as Sam said, if you're a football club owner and you're consistently making profit, then you're probably a god in the football ownership world. It's just the reality that at this level of football, even in the second division, it's very, very unlikely that you're going to make, that you're going to be making profit whatsoever. It's only those top clubs in the world that get anywhere near making profit. Even I'd probably argue maybe even just think off the top of my head, maybe Liverpool, City and Bayern Munich maybe are actually making profit.
Yeah,
because
obviously, Real Madrid, PSG, they're like the super clubs, the sides.
PSG as well, yeah.
League. Yeah,
because PSG, they've this is going off brand a little bit, but they've been very clever in that they've made their club a fashion brand. But Real Madrid and Barcelona, they're losing money as well. But that's a different story. But yeah, I wouldn't be worried, Will. It could be far worse. We could have a bloke who bought a club for £1, then buys a piece of ground, builds a stadium, doesn't finish it, and sells us off for £1 and leaves us close to extinction.
Well, I was going to say, when you brought up the stadium owners and say it all comes back to Kazam, if we go down, at least we have somebody to blame. Yeah.
I mean, really, this is another tangent for another day, but could go even further back to Maxwell. I maintain that obviously there was a lot of situations around the status of British football at the time, but I believe that if we had that season of playing in Europe after we won the Milk Cup, I think maybe we would have stayed in the first division for a little bit longer, just because the players you could attract and all that kind of stuff. But that's a subject for an entirely different day, and to chat with someone with a lot more life experience than the three of us. So let's talk about the Championship, because we have got 7 matches left to play. 7 matches to save Oxford United's status in the second division. We'll talk about the preview for the 2 Easter games in a moment, because obviously next week's the international break, as we always like to do around these parts. We're going to try and bring you something a little bit special. It's still in the works, but just wait and see for that next week. But Connor, like we said, the EFL expert, give us the rundown on the situation at the sides around us before we dive specifically into Portsmouth and Hull.
The quick rundown would be, in the least professional way possible, Sam, would be Leicester are honking, Portsmouth are really honking, West Brom, they're picking up under James Morrison. He's got them away from their broken strings, and they're actually playing like a team that knows what they're up against. And Blackburn, I'm still a little bit unsure on Blackburn, but I think that they will be dragged into it at some point. I'm still not fully convinced about Michael O'Neill having a part-time gig there. Sheffield Wednesday, as we know, are gone. I think that if we're looking at this moment in time, we've got to stay above Leicester and Portsmouth. There would be a bit of irony if the table finished now and Rowett was relegated with Leicester, but it's been hammered in all season through a lot of people saying that there's just no way that Leicester and West Brom will go down because of the quality that they have, and especially in Leicester's case. But if you watch Leicester, they're rubbish. They're toothless up front. And it's the same with Portsmouth, just absolutely toothless up front. And they've got massive injury crisis. And it was compelled and compounded yesterday with, I think that Ubu Adams, they're signing in January, is also out now for an extended period of time. So I think that the main club really, or the main two at the moment that we really should be looking to finish above are Portsmouth and Leicester.
Just quickly on the West Brom, because obviously we played them twice this season, so we won't be talking about them again, most likely. Morrison, they were pretty bad when they came to the Castad a couple of weeks ago. All of a sudden he's worked some dark magic and got them 2 wins on the spin. They're on an unbeaten run of 4 without a loss. Some mad stuff he's managed to pull off, especially, like I say, third manager of the campaign, which usually 3 managers in a season means you're gone because, so much chopping and changing, in their backroom staff, in the system that he wants to play and all that kind of stuff. But, hopefully we can reel them in. We are 4 points behind West Bromwich Albion, a point behind Portsmouth, who have a worse goal difference, of course, compounded by that 6-1 defeat yesterday. Obviously, Blackburn also sat on 43, should mention. So, with a win against Hull, we could climb out of the relegation zone onto 41 points. Of course, that entirely depends on other results going our way. So again, we'll talk a bit more about Portsmouth in a minute, but first let's touch on Hull, who of course come to OX4 on the 3rd of April for a 3 o'clock kickoff. That game earlier in the campaign, obviously, I think it was still inside the first month, we were dominated and very lucky to go in level at half-time. And obviously, McBurney's 93rd minute winner was gutting but not unexpected. Connor talks about what their forms look like in the past couple of games.
Can you go to Will just a moment? Sorry, Sam.
Yes, of course. Yeah, Will. Will, what do you reckon to Hull's campaign? Because it's been an interesting one for them. Obviously, they're, gone from last season under Sellers just surviving to under this new manager. It seems their owners' idea of just hiring any random manager that might have had might have touched the Turkish Super League for a couple of seconds has finally paid off, and they're in the top 6, and they are it's 3 points. I was going to say comfortably. It's an odd one because it's very congested, that playoff spot. Obviously, pretty much I'd say the automax is done, but they're well in contention to be in that playoff final.
I'll tell you one thing, is that when we lost to Hull in August, I remember that away game well. I was sat right next to the Hull fans, so that was great. And when we lost, I thought, oh gosh, because we all knew Oxford. I mean, we're going to be in the bottom half of the table this season, and I thought Hull were going to be joining us. So when we lost that game, I was like, we've just lost to one of our likely to be relegation contenders. And I actually remember when we uploaded that episode on YouTube, I think there was a whole fan in the comments. It was like, what do you mean we're going to be a relegation contender? We're going to be completely different. I read that. I thought, oh, come off it. Like, look where you were last. Yeah. Not going to be any higher, are you? And they've completely outperformed my expectations of them. I thought they'd be down in the table with us. So I sort of see that Friday game as like, it'd be great if we get a point. Realistically, are we going to? There's such an, I wouldn't say, I don't know about in form, but they're so high up the table that it's just not going to have quality that far outmatches what we can offer. It would be great if we can just get something from that game. It would be great if the whole stadium was together and just singing as loud as we can for that game. But all the focus, everything has to be on Portsmouth. We have to win that game, and if we can get anything from Hull, that's brilliant. But all the focus is on Portsmouth.
Connor, talk us through Hull's campaign, because like we said, they've defied certainly our expectations. Like we mentioned, we thought they'd be down with us, after sacking yet another manager.
Completely exceeded all expectations, and as Will alluded to, apart from Hull City fans' expectations, I, like Will, thought that they would struggle and they would be they'd be down at the bottom with us. And I think that the fact that they, sacked Ruben Sellers at the end of last season after keeping them up and being under a transfer embargo, I think that really curtained over some of the transfer business that they had done in the past 2 years. The big one, obviously, being Ollie McBurney, absolute weapon up front. I'd like to say I don't know why that we didn't go in and have conversations. We might have done, but I think it would have been a fair whack on his wage bill, because their owner, he does back Hull a fair bit. So because they can only make free transfers and loans, what they can pay, there's no restrictions on what they can pay in wages. In the centre, in the number 10 as role as well, you got Joe Gelhardt, who, very, very good player at championship level, has played a big part when he was at Leeds United and at Sunderland previously. In the centre of midfield, you got Matt Crooks, who's a championship stalwart in the centre of midfield, who was at Middlesbrough. You got Semi Ajayi at the back as well, and another player who every Oxford fan, when they saw he went from Blackpool to Hull, were thinking, who is this guy's agent? Because he's done an absolutely outrageous job. Kyle Joseph out on the right-hand side, when he was at Oxford, he played down the middle, was being played out on the right, sometimes as an inverted winger cutting inside. And he's actually having a pretty decent season with 13 goal contributions this season. He got an assist and a goal in his last game against Sheffield Wednesday, and I'm sure that he'll be that'll be featuring at the OX4 come on Good Friday. So, but Hull have been slipping. They've slipped up recently, but they seem to have found a little bit of form again and getting a huge win against Wrexham. Their loss to West Brom 3-0. I'm going to, give them a bit of leeway, because they did have a man sent off and they went down 3-0, and especially against a West Brom side who seems to be rejuvenated. And against Sheffield Wednesday, most teams are going to go to Hillsborough this season and come away with 3 points. So it's going to be an interesting test with Hull City. I'd say that I'd be happy if we come away with a point from Hull City, because the next game is where we need to come away with 3 points.
100%. So that is, of course, on Easter Monday. We travel to Portsmouth, a game that, thanks very much, EFN Sky, is now a 12:30 kickoff.
The worst thing about that, by the way, Sam?
Go on.
It's a 12:30 kickoff, and the Good Companion doesn't open until 11, and they don't serve booze until 11:30.
Yeah, I'm very much looking at getting a hotel overnight, so I go there Sunday night, because I can't be dealing with Easter Monday trains and stuff from OX down to Portsea Island. But I mean, obviously, another one of our games, our trip to Pride Park, has been moved to a 12:30 kickoff, because Sky Sports Plus are like, give us games. Even it's another discussion for a whole another time, because that's just ludicrous. But that is I'd say, will probably a make or break game against Portsmouth. I saw a lot of discourse, obviously, after their result yesterday, and they're saying they're down, they're finished, all that kind of stuff. Which 4 losses in their last 5 games. But it's mad to kind of think how the season has changed, because a couple of weeks ago they thought, okay, they were thinking they should be all right. We were thinking we're done and all that kind of stuff. But like I say, as far as I'm concerned, if we don't win that game, we're done.
Yeah. Well, watch us beat Hull and then lose to Portsmouth. It could happen.
Yeah.
Just beat Hull and then beat Portsmouth, and then we're dancing at that point. Yeah, that is the make or break. That is a 6-pointer. That is sold out away and singing for 90 minutes. You have to get a goal. You have to get the 3 points. I don't care if it's the scrappiest goal you've ever witnessed with your own eyes. Just get it over the line and get us the 3 points. If we lose that, is that the season done with? I wouldn't agree with that, because there's been so many times this season we've been like, where our fans, maybe the more reactionary elements of our fans, have been like, okay, that's the season done with. I think the loss to I think it was Stoke. I think when we lost, I think it was 2-0 or 2-1 or 3-1. I can't quite remember. So, and after that game, a lot of people, including myself, a little bit, just resigned ourselves. I think we were at that point 7 points off safety. We're finished. We might as well just accept it. It will make it less painful when it actually gets mathematically confirmed. And now we're in a position where, like, but anyway, I'm going off tangent a bit. That is make or break. That is the cup final. We have to win that. I mean, every game from now is a cup final, as people have been saying online. But I don't think if we lose that, we're done completely, because the season's been so crazy and so nuts. There's probably still a few more twists and turns. Like I say, we'll probably end up beating Hull on Friday and lose to Portsmouth on Monday. And then what do we say after that? But yeah, I do see your point. It's a very important game, but I don't think that's the defining one. But we do have to win, basically. I probably don't make any sense. I probably contradict myself at every possible point. But we have to win it. But if we don't win it, it's not over just yet. Is basically my thinking.
Connor, our recent trips to Fratton Park have not gone well, to say the least. But like I say, kind of the Portsmouth fans' thought process, from what I've seen from yesterday, particularly, so it's probably crowded by that result. They think they're kind of potentially dead and buried.
I'm gonna completely go the opposite way to Will. I'm probably going to say that game at Fratton Park has the potential to be our biggest game since the conference playoff final. Mm-hmm. In that, I think that whoever wins it, they know that whoever loses, because no team's going to want to come out of there with a point. Like, whoever comes out losing it, I think a lot of their fans are going to be resigned to the fact that they might be playing League One football next season. And with Portsmouth, as I alluded to earlier, with their financials, because of the lack of money that have been spent by the owners, its terms, their 6-1 loss at QPR, mixed with, you have to acknowledge they've been rampant with injuries, and their best player in Josh Murphy, he's out for the rest of the season. I would be a lot more fearful about going to Fratton Park if he was still playing, because he, with all due respect, he shouldn't be in a team that's near the bottom of the Championship. He should probably be in a team that's challenging for the top 6. He's that good. But I think there's a real opportunity at Portsmouth, because if we go there, we've only been given 2,000 tickets in that corner of the Milton Road end, or whatever it's called. We make ourselves known. We get on top. We get on early. The Fratton Park faithful, they're going to be nervy that game. They're going to be nervous, because they know that if they can't really, they're pretty hopeless at finding the back of that, and they know if they go one down early, they're going to have to come at us, and we're going to be there waiting, ready on transition to go straight for them. Sam, well, I can't tell how excited I am for this trip. I know that you said that we it hasn't been great there lately for us Yellows fans, but I'm so excited. I genuinely think that this could be an all-timer.
I hope you're right, mate. But we've got another week and a half to sit and stew on that game, so we'll see if your thoughts are different on the weekend of that game. But like the chaps have said, it's a massive couple of weeks. Obviously, 7 games left of the campaign to see whether we'll be talking to you as a Championship or League One club. But thanks so much, viewers, for watching this week's episode of Walking the London Road. Like we said, please like, comment, and subscribe. Massive helps out in the algorithm. And follow us all on Twitter. And we'll see you next week for, like we said, what we're hoping will be a very special episode. And for our regular normal shows after the Hull and Portsmouth fixtures. We'll see you then.